My name is Claire. What happened to me that day is something I'll never forget. It still hurts to think about it, but I feel like I need to tell this story so others won't make the same mistakes I did. My husband, Michael, suggested we leave the kids at their grandma's for the weekend and go on a little trip, just the two of us. It was a great idea. We hadn't spent any time alone together in a long while. We packed our old tent and all the camping gear, but we still had to find the sleeping bags, which were somewhere down in the basement. I went downstairs and turned on the light. The bulb was dusty and barely lit the room. I found the sleeping bags, but when I was pulling them out, I accidentally bumped my hand against an old cabinet. That's when it all started. A book fell off the top of the cabinet, Stephen King's The Outsider. The cover gave me the creeps. Maybe it was just the dim basement lighting, but it looked terrifying. I had never read that book before. I knew it was about an investigation, cops, and some kind of mysterious murders. I flipped to the first page, skimmed a few lines, and noticed a description of a police car in the text. I closed the book and put it back on the cabinet. But for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about the cover. It just stayed with me. Michael and I dropped the kids off and headed out on our trip. He had picked a beautiful spot where we could spend a full day and night together. It was about a 4-hour drive, and from the parking area, just a 5-minute walk through the woods. The whole drive, we listened to music that had been popular 20 years ago. I munched on chips and washed them down with beer, while Michael gave me a jealous side glance but kept his hands on the wheel. We were only about 2 miles from our destination when I noticed something up ahead on the side of the road. A police car. As we drove closer, I stared at the two officers. One of them was holding a shotgun. The music in my ears seemed to go quiet. The book popped into my head again. Everything around me felt like it slowed down. I got hit with a wave of déjà vu so strong it made my skin crawl. It was a strange coincidence, but after a couple minutes, I shook it off and told myself it was just a book, nothing more. We arrived and parked the car in the lot. Another car was already there, which meant we'd have neighbors nearby. We grabbed our stuff and made our way through the woods to our spot. It was gorgeous. A huge lake with a stunning view, a sandy beach, and not a single person in sight. We set up our tent, built a fire, and got everything ready. We had plenty of snacks, drinks, music, and, most importantly, each other. It felt amazing to finally spend time together. If only we'd known how it would end. If only we'd stayed home. I spent the whole day lounging on the beach while Michael cooked over the fire, something he absolutely loved doing. A few hours later, the sun began to set. Michael said he had to pee and headed into the woods behind our campsite, just a few steps away. I decided to call my mom and check in on the kids. 5 minutes passed, and Michael still hadn't come back. Another 5 minutes went by. I started to worry. I gave it a few more, then tried calling him, only to realize his phone was in the tent. I had no idea where he'd gone. I called out to him a few times, but there was no answer. That's when I really started to get scared. I grabbed my phone and headed into the woods. The sun hadn't completely set yet, so there was still some light. I called for him as I walked between the trees. After a couple of minutes, I came out by the car, and there he was. I rushed over and smacked his shoulder, calling him an idiot and asking what the hell he was doing. He told me the tire had gone flat. He'd found a nail stuck in it, probably from the road on the way in. He tried plugging the hole by shoving the nail back in, but it wasn't working. We'd have to put on the spare, but it was getting dark, so we decided to wait until morning. We walked back to the tent and started cooking dinner. I don't know why, but ever since I saw that book in the basement, I'd had a terrible feeling. It had only gotten stronger as the day went on. By now, I just wanted to go home. Michael invited me to roast marshmallows with him by the fire. We sat there talking about everything, but mostly reminiscing about our younger days and laughing at old memories. I was only 17 when we met, and he was 21. But even back then, everyone knew we were meant to be together. Night had fully fallen, and only the fire lit up our little world. The air by the lake turned chilly, and we wrapped ourselves in an old, warm blanket. The fire was cozy, the sparks flying upward like glowing moths. A fog had started to form over the lake, and we decided it was time to head into the tent, to do the kind of thing I won't go into detail about here. Afterward, we climbed into our sleeping bags. They were warm and comfy. I fell asleep and had just started to dream when a loud noise woke me up. The car alarm had gone off. I looked at the time. It was exactly midnight. Michael woke up too and started getting dressed to check on the car. I immediately told him maybe he shouldn't go out there in the middle of the night, through the woods. We didn't know what triggered the alarm, and it could be dangerous. but Michael calmed me down, saying it was probably just a branch falling on the car or some glitch. I didn't want to stay on the beach alone, so I decided to go with him. We turned on our flashlights and headed out. The fire was out now, and the place didn't feel nearly as cozy as it had earlier. The woods looked even scarier in the dark. I didn't want to go in at all. I stayed right behind Michael, holding his hand. The sound of the alarm got louder as we got closer. At one point, I heard a loud crack, branches snapping, to our right, behind the trees. I froze and told Michael, "There's someone out there." He told me that forests always make creepy noises at night, and that it was nothing. He kept walking. I kept shining my flashlight in every direction, trying to convince myself we were alone. We finally reached the car. Michael turned off the alarm, and there was no one around, but something strange caught my attention. The other car we had seen earlier was still parked there, so where were its owners? We looked around but didn't see anything suspicious. I told Michael I didn't want to go back to the tent. I suggested we stay in the car. Michael didn't want to leave all our stuff unattended and said he'd go grab it. I didn't want him to go alone. The forest was creeping me out more and more, but he reassured me and asked me to stay in the car. So he left, and I was alone. It was so dark and quiet, no wind, completely still. I couldn't even connect to the internet. All I could do was wait and stare into the forest, hoping to see Michael coming back soon. I sat there, fed up with the darkness, and turned the ignition so I could turn on the headlights. The light made me feel a little better. I waited like that for about 10 minutes. Michael should have been back by now. I called his phone. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. What's going on? If you're ignoring my calls on purpose, I swear I'll kill you. I turned my head toward the beach and squinted at the trees. Movement. I saw something move between the trunks. Finally, he's back, I thought. But the figure didn't come out of the woods. He just stood there. My headlights were facing the other way, so I couldn't see his face. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the car. "Michael, is that you?" I took a few steps closer and pointed the light at him. Oh my God, that wasn't Michael. His face was dirty and deformed, and he was staring straight at me. I froze, took a step back. When the man realized I'd seen him, he smiled and ran back into the woods. My heart and breath stopped at that moment. I ran back to the car and locked all the doors, but Michael was still out there. I had to warn him. I didn't know what to do. I got out and ran into the woods. I couldn't leave him out there alone. And honestly, I didn't feel safe in the car either. The flat tire meant we couldn't leave. I moved quickly, tripping over roots and branches as I went. Then I heard a gunshot. I knew something terrible had happened. I sprinted toward the beach. I didn't care about my own safety. I just wanted to find Michael. When I came out of the trees, I saw our tent. It was slashed open. Our stuff was scattered everywhere. Oh my God, where's Michael? Tears poured from my eyes. Then I heard his voice. "Claire, I'm here!" It was Michael. He was okay. He'd been hiding, watching everything unfold. I was in shock. I asked why he didn't come back to the car. He said he dropped his flashlight by the tent, and while the beach had some light, the woods were pitch dark. He saw the man who slashed our tent. Michael waited for him to leave. Then he heard the gunshot and decided to wait a bit longer. I told him I saw the man's face. I was shaking and crying, on the edge of a breakdown. Michael held me and said everything would be okay. We walked back to the car together, and that police cruiser was there again. The same one from earlier. An officer told us they'd caught a criminal they'd been tracking for a week. I couldn't believe it was real, and all I could think about was that book. That book was a warning, one I shouldn't have ignored. I still don't know what The Outsider is really about. But now, I have my own story to tell. If you ever feel like you should just stay home, listen to that feeling. Sometimes doing nothing is the safest thing you can do. Hi, I'm Iris. That day marked the end of the school year, and my friends and I had made plans to hang out all day. There were 5 of us in our group, and in just a few days, everyone was going to leave town. We wanted to spend a whole day together, not knowing that this day would forever bond us through the most horrifying memory. It was a Wednesday, and Chris invited all of us to the lake. He promised a picnic with loud music and lots of junk food. He picked us up in his old red pickup truck. I told my parents I'd be home by 10 p.m., but I lied. I knew I would be out all night. If I had told them the truth, they wouldn't have let me go. Chris picked me up around 7 p.m., and then we went to get the others. Unfortunately, 2 of our friends said they couldn't make it. So in the end, it was just the 3 of us. Me, Chris, and Abby. We decided not to cancel our plans and went to the lake anyway. It took about an hour to get to the small dock, and we started setting up camp a little way into the woods. The lake was pretty big and located just outside of town. At the dock, there was a motorboat tied up, and for some reason, it immediately caught my attention. I wondered who it belonged to. While Chris was starting the fire, I was unloading stuff from the truck. Abby never liked helping, so she wandered off to the dock to enjoy the view. Chris and I were talking a lot about what we were going to do after graduation, about our friends, and just gossiping. We didn't even realize how quickly we finished setting up camp. And then I noticed something. Where was Abby? We looked around and realized she had been gone for a while. Chris and I walked over to the dock, and there she was, standing there. I went up to her and put my hand on her shoulder. "Abby, what are you doing? Come back to the fire." She stayed silent, staring straight ahead. "Abby, what's wrong?" She stood frozen, her eyes wide open, her mouth slightly parted. Her face looked almost stone-like. "Don't you see him?" she said, her voice trembling with fear. "See who?" I looked out over the water. There was nothing there, just the lake. Abby kept staring and said there was a man in the water. I scanned every inch of the lake that I could see, but there was no one. Chris just stood there, not really understanding what was going on. I told Abby there was nothing there. She looked at me with terrified eyes and started to cry. I hugged her and led her back to the campfire. I didn't really know what to do either. We sat by the fire, and I handed Abby a bottle of water. Chris pulled me aside and said we needed to head back home and take her to the hospital. I agreed. Our little picnic was over. Chris started packing up, but I decided to go back to the dock one more time. What had Abby seen that left her in such shock? It was already dark, but everything was still visible without a flashlight. A thick mist had settled over the lake. The place looked both creepy and strangely calm. I don't know how to explain it, but I was sure Abby hadn't imagined things. I stared into the water for a few minutes but saw nothing unusual. I was about to turn back when my eyes fell on the motorboat. I stepped closer, and oh God, I saw a hand sticking out from under a dirty blue tarp. I screamed in terror. Chris came running and I pointed at the boat. He swore under his breath and went to pull back the tarp. "Oh shit," Chris said. "What is it?" I asked, too scared to look. Chris told me to turn around and go back to Abby. At that moment, I knew Abby hadn't lost her mind. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of the body. A man's body, mangled and broken. I almost threw up. Chris put his arm around me and led me back to the campfire. Abby was still in a state of shock. We immediately called the police. An ambulance arrived soon after, along with our parents, who had been waiting for me to come home. The doctors said Abby was in deep shock, but she would recover. I stood by a police car, giving my statement to an officer. Later, I found out the man was just a local fisherman, and it was his boat. Who had done that to him, I never found out. But sadly, my last day of school had turned into a nightmare. When I turned 20, my parents decided to rent an entire house by the lake. It was their birthday gift to me. Oh, by the way, I'm Sandra, and that birthday could have easily been my last. The story started off just like any normal family trip. We packed enough stuff for a 2-day stay and headed out to the house. It was about 150 miles away, deep in the middle of nowhere. I slept through most of the drive, so for me, the time passed quickly. I forgot to mention, my younger brother Sean was with us too. He was probably glued to his phone playing Minecraft or whatever it is teenagers are into these days. After a few hours, we finally pulled up to the lake house. It was big, 2 stories, with a huge BBQ area. There was even a large wooden barrel filled with warm water. I had never seen anything like it before. Before we could move in, we had to sign a rental agreement and pay the owner. His name was Bill. He looked about 60 years old. He wore a dirty work jumpsuit, and it seemed pretty clear he wasn't making a fortune off this rental business. Bill took the money, showed us around the house, and told us to make ourselves at home. Then he said goodbye and left. And just like that, we started our little vacation. I'm not going to describe the whole first day. Nothing special really happened. But around 6 p.m., a chain of events started that almost ended in tragedy for my family. My dad was grilling meat outside, and I decided to take a walk through the woods. I didn't go far. I could still see the house. It was still light out, and I was just strolling along a little trail, enjoying the fresh air. That's when I heard it, a branch snapping somewhere in the trees. I turned around and saw someone standing behind a big tree. They were clearly trying to hide from me. I immediately decided it was time to head back to the house. Maybe it was just someone using the woods as a bathroom and I had interrupted them. I picked up my pace and glanced back. The stranger was gone. Honestly, it scared me pretty bad. I was practically running back to the house, constantly looking around. My dad noticed me and asked what happened. I told him I had seen a man hiding behind a tree. Dad said it was probably just my imagination, or maybe a hunter. Come on, I'm not 5 years old making up stories about imaginary people. I went inside because it was starting to get chilly. I didn't tell Mom about what had happened. I just helped her set the table. Soon after, Dad came inside too, bringing the cooked steaks. It was getting darker outside. We turned on the lights in the fireplace and sat down for dinner. And then, a knock at the door. Dad opened it. It was Bill. He said he just wanted to check if everything was okay, and he brought us some more firewood. Dad thanked him but pointed out that we already had plenty of wood. As for me, I couldn't help but feel that Bill was invading our personal space. Before leaving, he asked if he could use our bathroom. Dad naturally said yes. An hour later, it was very dark outside. We stayed at the table, listening to soft, relaxing music. My parents reminisced about my childhood and funny memories about my brother and me. It was very cozy, but night was approaching, and it was time to sleep. I went upstairs. My room was at the end of the hallway, right across from the bathroom. I entered, flopped onto the big soft bed. I wasn't sleepy yet, so I decided to scroll through Instagram and watch some YouTube videos. Around 2 a.m., I heard a noise. Something had fallen. At first, I thought it was just from the video I was watching, but when I rewound it, I realized the sound had come from outside my headphones. I took them off and listened. Maybe it was Sean going to the bathroom or one of my parents. I decided to just go to sleep and close my eyes. I began to dream, but hadn't fully fallen asleep yet. I don't even know what that state is called. Suddenly, a loud noise jolted me awake. My heart started racing, and for a moment, I didn't even know where I was. It scared me so much to wake up and not recognize my surroundings. I had momentarily forgotten that we were spending the night in a different house. After a minute, I pulled myself together. Had I imagined it? But then I heard another sound. Someone slammed a door across from my room. I got out of bed and approached the door. I could hear footsteps. I opened the door, but the hallway was empty. Curiosity got the better of me. Maybe Sean had gone downstairs to sneak some cake. I put on my slippers and went to check Sean's room, but he was sound asleep in bed. Then I peeked into my parents' room. They were both sleeping too. What the hell? I had definitely heard footsteps. I slowly moved toward the staircase. I could hear someone moving around in the kitchen. It was very dark, and I accidentally stumbled. At that moment, the sound stopped. I rushed to wake up my parents. Mom, Dad, someone's downstairs. Dad got up to check. I followed right behind him. We went down and turned on the kitchen light, and there was Bill. He looked at us, clearly surprised to see anyone awake. It felt like he had completely forgotten that we were renting his house. "What are you doing here?" my father asked angrily. Bill was sitting on the couch and hesitated for a moment. He stood up, smiled, and said that he had just come to check the fridge.
"No worries, I fixed it. Now your food won't spoil,"
he said. He wished us good night and left. Dad stood there, stunned. He hadn't even had a chance to say anything. It was definitely not normal. We exchanged worried looks, but decided to go back to bed. I went upstairs, thinking that Bill was definitely strange. I just wanted to leave this place already. I fell asleep quickly and slept until about 4 a.m. And then, I heard another noise. This time, it was right outside my door. I got up and approached it carefully. The door was thin, and I could hear someone breathing right behind it. I took a step back, and the floor creaked. I immediately heard quick footsteps running down the stairs. I opened the door and followed, and there he was again. "Bill, what are you doing here?" I demanded angrily. "You know you're not allowed to be inside while the house is rented out." Bill stood silently near the fireplace, ignoring me. "Bill?" He still didn't respond. The house was dark, except for the flickering light from the fireplace. I noticed our food lying out on the table. He had been eating our food. Suddenly he turned around, and his face no longer looked friendly. In a low, angry voice, he said,
"Everything here is mine. It's all mine."
He repeated it and started walking toward me. "Bill, what are you doing?" I backed away. He stopped next to the table. I saw a knife lying there, and Bill's hand was right beside it.
You're sleeping in my bed.
He growled with intense anger. He reached for the knife, and I screamed. He was coming toward me, and my legs froze in fear. I couldn't move. I was in shock. My parents started running down the stairs. Seeing them, Bill dropped the knife and bolted out of the house. Dad asked what happened, but I couldn't say a word. I just pointed at the knife, and he understood everything. He rushed out the door, but it was too late. Bill had already disappeared into the woods. We immediately called the police, but it would take them about 20 minutes to get to us. While we waited, my parents gave me tea to help calm me down. Meanwhile, Dad searched the house for anything that could tell us more about Bill. He found a driver's license. It had Bill's name on it. But the photo showed a completely different man. "What the hell?" Dad said. Soon the police arrived, and we told them everything. They started searching and investigating, but they never found the man who tried to attack me. They never found the real Bill either. To this day, I don't know who rented us that house, or what he did to the real Bill, and I'm too afraid to even imagine what he might have wanted to do to me. I'll never forget his face. Never.